So CBS News just concluded the vice presidential debate. We're recording this at 10:50 p.m. I'm probably going to post this first thing in the morning on October 2nd. But coming out of it, I was, for starters, surprised with aspects of it. Other aspects of it was like, okay, can we get this going? But I'm joined right now by Dexter Tarbox, contributor here. Welcome back.
Hey AJ, it was fun going through this with you.
All right, so CBS News did it. There were 738,000 people watching the YouTube live stream, let alone the Paramount Plus, the TV broadcast, and everything like that. Norah O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan were the two moderators. They're okay, and they did a little bit of the nonsense fact-checking stuff, but when it came to that stuff, I felt it was pretty minor. I mean, the big thing that was super great to see was, for the most part, it was centered around policies that, in theory, we should have seen with Trump v. Harris, but here we are anyway. So we have foreign policy, climate, U.S.-Mexico border, deficit in housing in a way that didn't make any sense, reproductive rights, role of the VP. Like it was great to actually see that and actually have a proper debate format.
No, I'll say that you're right. There was a lot of nonsense that appeared throughout the debate, but it largely lived up to the expectations that I had for this one. Namely, like I said at the beginning, that this would be more of a return to the traditional debate style that we've seen in the past. I think part of that, as I've said, is due to the candidates. Though it's very opposite to what we've seen with Trump v. Biden or Trump v. Harris. With these two, I think it was not a surprise that it should be more of a toned-down discussion and more policy-focused. And as you said as well, I think that is ultimately what a lot of people were hoping for. So I think they're glad for glad for this outcome.
Now, before we get into some of the policies that were brought up, let's just talk about the people and the way they handled themselves through it. I thought Vance was a machine. I thought he did fantastic. I loved his outfit. They was going, made him look young, and made him look a little more hip. It kind of goes along with the new right feel that he's trying to go for, mixed with that's still conservative enough to have the more blue collar MAGA types not go. Who's this guy? He was solid. He didn't really focus on things around him. He was paying attention to the moderators and the cameras and was on task. Walz, on the other hand, was a blathering mess a whole bunch of times during it. He was constantly looking down at his notes and concerned, fearful look. If you look at the thumbnail on this video, that's perfectly that he made that face like at least 50% of the time as he was not talking, and that's not good. It shows he has the same weakness that Harris has when under pressure. They don't know how to respond if they don't have a canned answer.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was more than just looking down in terms of the facial expressions on the part of Tim Walz. He looked really concerned. At various points, he was even flush when he was confronted with questions. And again, that aligns in many ways with what I was predicting for this, because when we look at J.D. Vance's record, this is a really polished debater. This is someone who's gone out and done this quite a lot in very adversarial settings, even recently, but all the way back through his academic career, law, and so on. This is a guy who thrives in this format of debate. He knows how to control his face, his voice, all aspects of his tone and presentation. Again, just as I expected, a very polished debater, which is not what we could have expected, nor do I think anyone really did from Tim Walz. That was relatively a very unpolished performance by him, though he did avoid, I will say, many of the pitfalls that I was worried about him falling into. I mean, namely, even just his entrance and sort of his level, let's say, which is even on SNL the other night, something that's been pretty heavily mocked, his ridiculous sort of waving and pratfalls and stuff that he does when he goes out. The fact that he was able to stifle that and take on more of a serious tone potentially presidential tone, I think was good for him. And he didn't get absolutely lost when he was confronted on the things that I was most worried about, namely, as I said before, his record as a liar and the credible accusations that he has told many important mistruths about his record. I don't think he answered them successfully.
It was something the moderators got him back on, was the whole Tiananmen Square situation. And that was like, oh, okay, the moderators are actually going to push back on something from a Democrat, which is a really good sign, because he didn't have an answer.
Because that's why I almost congratulate a little on it, because he did such a long-winded deflection. But you're right, it really wasn't ultimately successful, because the moderators did come back on him and push for a real answer to that question. And it was one of my biggest fears about Tim Walz, is how is he going to deal with this? Is he going to get completely flustered? He didn't. But he was brought back to that question, and the answer wasn't good.
And we go over to abortion, which is it's a hot button issue. As much as Republicans want to hope that it just disappears in the ether, it's a huge deal for Democrats. Walz was outright throwing out mistruths about literally a case that was just a few weeks ago that everyone can fact check. What was her name again? Amber Thurman. So that story she ended up dying from complications from the abortion pill. Something that I wish Vance nailed a little more directly as to that. I wonder if he wasn't quite sure on the fly necessarily who this individual was, because he's been busy the last few weeks for obvious reasons. But Walz was outright lying on it, and Vance is still harping on the fact that him and Trump are, like, let the states decide. Vance has admitted multiple times he's changed where he stands on the subject, which is natural for someone who's only been in office for 2 years.
Well, both of them have had to adjust the way that they present their policies on abortion. By both of them, I mean J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. I think they have struck a very good moderate position on it. It's not exactly what my ideal position would be. It's it's left of where many other people would wish it to be in the Republican Party. I think that they have done that well. And so, what was the point that you had just raised? Because it gave me a thought about Tim Walz's response on the question.
It's like he lied, like he blatantly lied about
the lies. Thank you. That was it. Yeah, there was something you said that made me. It was we spoke about it as we were watching the debate unfold live. I recognized that name, and I think you're right. Perhaps maybe Tim Walz didn't. He recognized that I was reading it, but didn't know the information, and I wish he had, because it would have been great. Because you and I were able to look it up as it was happening and find the details of that case. And I knew the second that Tim Walz raised it, that it was one of the examples in which there's more to the story than the Democrats like to reveal when they discuss that. These very dramatic, horrible examples of the impact of laws restricting abortion. I knew the second he raised it, it had to be one of those to which there was more. And of course, as it turns out, there was.
It's Democrats, once again, they never have a perfect hero that they can bring up that can't just be shot down as not necessarily what they have to support their case. They always screw it up.
It's bad almost that I would have, my immediate reaction, as it turns out correctly, was that there's got to be something else wrong with this. But that is the situation with these Democrat talking points, that often when you hear them in such an extreme case as this, well, it can't fully be true. It's unfortunate that we have to default almost to that understanding of Democrats when they make a political point. But here we are, yeah.
Yeah, so moving over to some of the other stuff that was brought up, I mean, there's a bunch of nonsense around healthcare that was like, the guys are both kind of trying to get something across. There's a lot of settled matters that have already been through the Supreme Court. There's a whole bunch of lying from Walz when it came to the border situation, but Vance hit him so many times with the fact Harris is part of the Biden administration. She has had so many chances to speak up, be that hero to jump in and do something. She was literally given the chance to be the border czar and to do something about this situation that's now escalated to like 12 million border encounters since the start of the administration versus the 2 million, I think it was 2.5 million during the Trump administration. Like that's
no comparison.
10 million more people, and it's because of the way they've handled the border. And Vance did a great job doing it, laying out some specific ideas that the executive branch can do at any time, but just hasn't done while Biden's been in office, because they've just been passing the buck on everything. When it comes to that, when it comes to inflation, they just pass the buck.
Well, it's been the point that many people have been begging Trump and Trump surrogates to express since the first debate, if not obviously before, which is just the idea that, of course, she's been in office for 3.5 years. By President Biden's own admission, an integral part of the decision-making process on many, many important issues, including Afghanistan and others. So it's not like she was a John Adams-esque vice president. This is someone who the president himself says was highly important in decision-making. And the idea that she hasn't affected any of the policies that she says she wants to do on the border, on economic policy, or anything else, but not only not affected them, but she almost seems now to have backlash against Biden's policies, of which she was apparently an integral part. It was something that really did need to be pressed on. Again, it's something that people have been asking for Trump and his surrogates to press on for a while. I'm very happy that J.D. Vance brought that out tonight, that question, because it is so impactful. I really hope that continues to be a key message of the campaign in the appropriate way. Again, this is apparently the last confrontation either of these two are going to have.
Or even the presidential candidates are going to have.
Exactly. Any of these people are going to have. So I'm glad it was raised now in this context. I almost wish we had more opportunities to confront them on it. I hope in rallies, in other press conferences, and other media events, they have a way to effectively bring that question out, because it should be on the mind of every voter who is on the fence about Kamala Harris's record.
So let's get to the closing here before we wrap up. So Walz with the most weak-ass closing, where he's just throwing name drops that I've got Taylor Swift and such on board. He glossed over the some of the sketchier neocon Republicans that have signed on with his campaign. Dick Cheney, for example. Funny Walz maybe thought that was not a good idea to bring up in his closing. And Harris is a different option. Like she's the incumbent, basically. Like she's the vice president that's looking to be the next president, so that's a lie. And Vance, on the other hand, just brings up policies, points the finger at the failures of the Biden-Harris administration, just point by point. The cost of energy, the cost of food, housing, safety issues. Harris has been in office for 1,400 days and hasn't done anything. And they want to go back to the successes that the Trump administration had with policies and things that were actually happening. He didn't mention any of the nonsense that Trump says. It was just like, just consider how much better your life was during that time.
Oh, yeah. I think that we know coming out of tonight that J.D. Vance is absolutely the best Trump surrogate there is out there. I think he was a great pick for vice president. We can pretty conclusively say after watching this, despite some of the things that have been thrown against him that have tried to paint him as a bad choice, perhaps for different reasons. I think tonight we saw exactly why he was picked. He is really excellent at articulating all of the finer points of the benefits of Trump's policies and American life under the Trump regime. And he did it very concisely, again, very articulately, and in the context of a debate against a man who in his closing, as you said, rattled off basically a number of platitudes and bizarre endorsements. The fact-based, very serious presentation that we got from Vance, again, was just a tremendously convincing argument, I think, for a vote for Trump. The behavior of a man as an excellent surrogate for the president, which is the most you could hope for in a vice presidential candidate and in a potentially consequential vice presidential debate. Someone who is a perhaps even a better surrogate for his policies than the president himself. I don't think you could ask for more than what J.D. Vance delivered tonight.
All right, Dexter Tarbox, contributor here at New England Take. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, great to talk to you through all this, AJ.
All right, NewEnglandTake.com. Check out more of what we're up to. It'll be interesting to see everyone else's analysis in the morning when I'm hopefully got 5 hours of sleep or whatever I'm going to get. I'm excited to be on WDEV with Ross Connolly here, the Vermont Viewpoint, on October 2nd also. If you're checking this out and the video's live in time, I'm going to be on at 9 a.m. So it'll be fun talking to different people about what this means, because I think it could actually mean some positive things for these campaigns. So we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. That's the nature of this campaign, especially this election cycle. All right, like and subscribe if you're checking us out on YouTube. We're on all major podcast platforms, so be sure to subscribe to us there, and we'll talk to you soon.